Hello, this is Kevin with Bangert Inc. And today we're going to take a look at the Sage Estimating Release 23 that came out the other day. The first topic we're going to take a look at in this session is updated phases and the edit item window. So the user interface as far as editing your group phases, and items and estimating itself has been modified. Let's take a look at what that means. So on the screen here, this is where I've got a picture of what it used to look like. So we used to be able to go through it and you can see it was a very singular thing. I could hit add and set up like a phase and a description and things like that, but I could only see one at a time unless I went off to like Database Editor or some other place. In estimating, this user interface, they've kind of gave it a nice facelift to it. So let's take a look at it. If I go up to my toolbar and go up to my data and phases, this is what the new window looks like now. So right away, you can see a very different look that I can actually start to see a lot of my database right off the bat. So I can basically see I've got, group phases. I can basically grab the box and make it a little bit, different size. That the old box wasn't very, you could kind of change it and nothing would really move around other than just, maybe the width of it and so forth. I could come back and change some of my column widths and so forth. So it's kind of a little bit of a hybrid of the database editor window in the fashion of being able to see multiple things. You could do some searches from here too. So, if I said concrete, maybe I could go through and see that in my database, I've got some concrete in a couple different areas of the database. So there again, just a little bit easier than pulling up a list and finding it in the list and those type of things. If I take this away, and let's say that I'm just going to add a new phase. So for some of the different things I'm going to talk about in this session and in my next portion of this one, I want to set up a new phase just to keep everything, kind of separated. Down here, there's an add. And I'm going to basically just type in the same phase number really close with just a little difference. So there I can actually see, as I was typing this heading, I can still see some of the other ones. So maybe I could tell, am I doing everything in uppercase or lowercase or proper case, or what was that other description that was somewhat similar that I'm trying to create this? So instead of a very singular thing, it's kind of cool because it's more almost like a little spreadsheet of being able to see my phases and group phases as I'm going through and adding it. And the only difference between a group phase and a phase is this little checkbox here. And then you still basically see your unit cost and your notes and same type of columns. I don't have my job cost turned on, but otherwise I'd have a job cost column here also. If I go off and hit add again, very easy. I could go off and create another one. And if you notice this one here, I hit add and it put it above the one that I just created. But numerically, it needs to go below it. So it'll basically just kind of list them out in whatever order I put them in, unless I close it down or tell it to refresh it and so forth. So basically, it just kind of puts it wherever I kind of had the cursor when I started it off. These are in a different color just because these haven't been saved yet. So I could hit cancel and just say, yep, I messed it all up and I don't want them and so forth. But if I go ahead and hit OK, oh, looks like I messed up my numbers. Let's see. Where did that end up going? So it looks like that went to... So as I can see here, apparently I messed up my numbers. So I made them 1,000 instead of 1,100. It looks like it was what my general conditions database was that I wasn't paying attention here. Renumbering can be as easy as just coming in and changing the number here. So I could go off and say, that's really going to be 1,100. And maybe this is really going to be 1,100. And same type of thing then. So if I say, okay, that should go off then and save it. And it will also go back and reorder it if it needs to be in a different order. So that way it moved it from up above down below here. So, renumbering a phase can be a lot easier because I can renumber things as I'm looking at the other numbers. So that way I can try to figure out, oh yeah, I went it between there, and maybe I could come up with a number just to move it down there. So, that was always kind of a problem with this renumber is it'd let you come up here and renumber, but you couldn't see what was above it or below it, or, hey, this is where I strategically want to put it in my list. So that's pretty cool that you could go through and actually see this information as you're making changes. And I could come back in here and change these descriptions around as I need to. Very, very interactive to basically just make a lot of changes. The other thing about the renumber, though, is if I were to go through and let's say I'm going to renumber this one. This is going to turn red because I'm not allowed to renumber that line. So if a phase has any items under it, just like this renumber here in the past, you could renumber this phase in the old version, but it would mess up all your items because none of your items would go along with it. Or if you renumbered an item, it wouldn't renumbered in any of your assemblies or item tables or models and things of that nature. So the neat thing that they've done here is if it knows that there's something in here that's going to get me in trouble and mess something else up, it will not let me renumber it. So that's kind of nice because that way, like you saw here, I don't have any items under these, so I can do whatever I want with these all day long. But this one, since it's got some sort of an item already associated with it, it's not going to allow me to make that change to that one. So if I go ahead and hit, cancel, it'll go back to, whatever it was there. And if I open that screen up again, I should be able to go off and see that I've got, my two new ones, and this one reverted back to whatever its number was previously and so forth. So kind of a nice little change. So it's a little different when you first get in there and so forth, but a lot more kind of interactive than what the single looking screen was. Let's take a look at items. So first off, let's go back to memory lane and take a look at what the old item screen used to look like. So there again, a very singular looking thing. So I could see my phase, my item, my description, unit of measures, waste factors, all this information, all my pricing of what categories and some of these things at the bottom and some more buttons over here on the side and so forth. So let's look and see what that looks like in the new version. If I go up to my items, little different going on because same problem with this is you could pull up a list of items, but once you picked something, you were just looking at that one thing. So one of the things that's pretty neat about this version is maybe I could pick a phase, like let's just say my personnel supervision for a moment. When I click on that one group phase, there's all the items associated with that one phase. So it's pretty neat the fashion that I could go through there, and as soon as I touch a particular phase, I can see all the items associated with it just kind of in its own little grid here. So I could see the item numbers going on and my descriptions going on, and I could do little spreadsheet things like make columns wider and see my takeoff unit of measure and formulas and crews and waste and things of that nature. So when I'm making modifications, I could see more than one item at a time as I'm going through there doing some of those type of things. So I'm going to go up to my blank one here, and I'm going to, matter of fact, before I do, let me focus on this a little bit more. If I clicked up on like group phase, it would show all the items in the group phase. If I came up here and said, go look for something like concrete, I could do a search to find all the different phases that have something to do with concrete in the description of the phases. And once I get into the vicinity of maybe where I'm going to do a lot of my changes and things of that nature, this little arrow here would actually let you minimize that box so you could get more screen time for everything else going on. Okay, so now I want to kind of focus on this portion a little bit. So we kind of said this is where I could see the different items that was associated with that particular phase. If I looked at a particular item, this was its item number and description. So this was a lot of the information that was at the top here. So my item number, my description, my takeoff unit, my waste, my formula, my crew, blah, 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 same concept going along here. So this top information you can see for multiple items at the same time. Down here, because there's so much different stuff going on, they've kind of held the same look. I can see labor material. So in this case, what they've done is they show all the categories and you just put a checkbox where you want it. So One of the things some people had troubles with is on the old version, you had to go down to this space and click on it, go to a drop down where, it wasn't very intuitive to know to do that. So this is kind of nice because I could go through and say, oh yeah, I want material 2, and then throw some dollars at it and so forth. And you kind of see all the categories in front of my face as I'm going through making these modifications and so forth. So as you look through here, this column's a little different because this is how you tell it what categories your dollars and things like that are going to be. But then you'll notice that you've got the very similar look of, so much money per some unit of measures, a date, productivity. So if I want to go and say there's 40 hours a week or 0.025 weeks per hour, however I look at my, productivities and things like that, you can flip that around. So all the same concept of this screen, just a little bit cleaner of getting to the information. And then same kind of concept with, I can see all my rounding. I could get to all my links and linking things, my subcategories. And then on the right-hand side of this box, I had something where I could go in and set up my WBS codes and so forth. And my price code were all separate buttons, and notes was a separate button. So they're again made that a little bit cleaner that, price code I've got up here, my BOM I've got up here, my notes I've got up here. So, some of those different buttons, instead of being hidden off on another screen, it's just, a little bit cleaner on another column so I can see the different price codes and different items. Or in this case, I could see the different WBS codes that are associated with an item and putting in whatever value I wanted to associate with the information. So let's take a look at doing some modifications. So I'm going to come back to that new phase that I just created there. And I'm going to say add that I want to add a new one. So a little bit different. So I'm going to tell it what phase I want to put it under. So I'm going to open up my list here, and I'm going to pick that one that we just created. What item number? So as long as it's red, there's something still missing. So I basically put in my, phases required, items required, descriptions required, unit of measures required. And then I've really got to associate where the money's going to be. So I have to tell it some sort of category. So down here, if I went ahead and said, yep, it's going to be labor. Now you notice at this point, I could say that I'm done with that item. So that's the bare minimum to getting an item set up. Now in this case here, I might go through there and say, I'm taking off per each, and maybe they're $5 each. And or matter of fact, let's say it's a labor item or material instead. So let's say it's $5 there, and let's say I don't want labor there. And I could hit add again. Same type of thing. So maybe item 10. Maybe this one's going to be labor. Maybe I'm going to say it's $45 per, and I could basically go off and pick different unit of measures. I'm just going to say per HR for hour. Since I'm taking it off up here as each, and I'm pricing it to put down here per hour, that's when the conversion comes up. It says, well, how many of them per hour? Or if I hit the little flip, how many hours per each does it take, and so forth. So in this case here, whatever it is, I'm going to say that we can do 10 of them an hour. And when I hit OK, those are now in that database, something I can use. So similar function of getting an item in there or changing the descriptions and things like that, but real nice because I could go through and see more than one at a time. Now let's take a look at another little twist. So if I go back over to personnel supervision here, here's all my different items. So let's come in here and let's say that in this case, I'm going to go through there and update this price of a superintendent because it hasn't been updated since 2002. So I'm going to go in here and let's say that I'm going to say $85 an hour. And then let's come down to the working superintendent. And let's say on that one there, I'm going to say something. So technically, I have made two changes, but I haven't hit OK yet to necessarily accept those changes. So if I hit show edits, you'll notice that this list just got filtered down to just show me the 2 items out of the 4 that I've modified since I've hit OK. And you'll notice it down here, that's a blue to represent that I've changed that value. So I can kind of tell with the color there what I've changed. And if I take the show all, it'll go back and show me all of them. And let's say maybe I come in here to strip site, and let's say maybe I want to change the description a little bit. So same type of thing going on. So as I go back through and say show edits, now I notice 3 that these have my dollars down here kind of blue that I've changed. This has a description that I've changed. So I can kind of see with colors what I've actually modified since I've hit OK. So there again, I could hit cancel and just, yep, don't want any of that stuff. Once I know that all these changes look good, I can hit OK. And that's now accepted in the database. And there again, one of the cool things about it is if I want to go to any particular existing items and go ahead and say, oh, well, I really wanted that to be, maybe item 15, I can go off and change item numbers, phase numbers, descriptions, any of that information, as long as it has not been used in some other place. So instead of messing up I don't know how many clients I've worked with where, we'll open up an assembly and they'll get an error message that says that item no longer exists because somebody's went through and deleted an item or renumbered an item that assembly used to use, where in this case here, they do that validation behind the scenes. They're not necessarily going to show me right from the screen what that, where that relationship is. But with that red there, it's going to let me know. It won't let me, renumber it if it's being used somewhere else. That was the first of the Sage Estimating Release 23 enhancements, and keep an eye out for some more. Thanks for watching.